This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by lynda.com, the unparalleled online video training library. For a free 10-day unlimited trial, visit lynda.com/MacVoices. Hi, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices at WWDC and the AltConf in San Francisco. I get, I think the first time ever, to do a live and in-person interview with Kelly Guimont, karaoke star.
Okay, we can go with that.
Yes, we'll go with that. Good to see you, Kelly.
Okay, it's good to see you too.
Okay, so I'm teasing you last night, but you really killed it with Cherry Bomb last night at the party. I was very impressed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now we've had the fun stuff. Now let's get serious.
Yeah.
What do you think were the highlights of the keynote that we saw yesterday? What got you most excited?
Well, it's sort of a small thing because they didn't really spend a lot of time on it, and it was that reproductive health is part of Health Kit. And so it's like somebody at Apple stopped and thought, half the world probably needs some of this data to be tracked. And it was never about having Apple build an app or anything like that. It was just having the capability to record the data and be able to feed it from whatever app it is that I want to already use. And so it was just one of those things that felt like how someone at Apple didn't really stop and think about that first, and that's one of the things I've always liked about Apple was that they were really thoughtful in that respect. So it was really nice to see that. I think the sort of bolt tightening release of Snow Mountain, or whatever we're going to end up informally calling it, is going to be interesting because, like they said yesterday, there's not a lot of new. It's a lot of let's take what we have and make it faster, make it stronger, make it better. So I'm excited to see where those things are going to end up. And then some of the iOS stuff I think is interesting, and the split screen might give us a sneak peek into what's coming down the road.
The split screen got me excited because I can see that being so useful. And I rail against people that try to say, I'm going to replace my MacBook with an iPad, because they're two different devices in my mind. But this definitely does move them closer together from a productivity standpoint.
It does, and it's funny that you say that you rail against people who do that, because I feel like there are certain people who, if they were technologically honest with themselves, would realize that they would be better served by maybe just having an iPad.
Whoa, stop right there. Technologically honest. That's a phrase that I think we need to trademark and use a lot. Because I think you're absolutely right. I think people do try to fool themselves into, I can get away with this or get away with that. And they end up having either an inferior experience or reducing their productivity instead of improving it.
Right, but then on the flip side of that, there are some people for whom the computer is not the center of their world. I know, but they're out there. And for those folks, I have members of my family who had, a 10 or a 12 or a 14-year-old computer that they were still trying to use that was on 56K dial-up, and once they went to the iPad, sat down and realized, I like to look at Facebook, I like to get email with the pictures of the grandkids, and I like solitaire. And those are the things I like to do. And if that's really all you're looking for, maybe look something up on a website occasionally. As long as the other stuff is working for you, for a lot of people, that iPad is more than enough machine. And a few people in my family have upgraded from some ancient Windows laptop to an iPad and been really happy with that experience. And it's actually been better for them because they don't have to deal with all of the admin that goes into being the person in charge of your own operating system. So it comes out to be a lot better for some folks. And that split screen stuff is going to make that transition easier for even more people, I think, if they are people that don't necessarily need all that stuff. I'm not editing professional video, I'm not trying to record super professional audio and edit the audio on the same device and upload it somewhere. I'm not, there are certain things that you have to have the right tool for the job, and I think for some people, the iPad is that right now, and for more people, that's going to be the case. It was really funny to see the watchOS stuff come. Everybody finally got a watch, and now they're here's how we're going to make them better.
And to come this quickly, that was another interesting thing, because I've talked to several developers already who said, we were surprised it didn't ship with native watch apps, but now all of a sudden we have just not a few weeks later, but a couple months later.
Yeah, from an external timeline, as a person who wasn't involved in all of that initially, it seems super, super fast that we get the watch in our hands, and now all of a sudden it's about to become more awesome. Well, for people who have them. I still don't have one. But,
that's right.
When I do, it's going to be great. I saw a bunch of stuff yesterday that means someday, when I get mine, it's going to be awesome.
I want to go back to the reproductive health thing. I think this is, I agree with you about the thoughtful part and all, and I feel like anytime Apple does things, they don't miss things.
Right.
They make decisions, and we may not agree with them, they may not be our priorities. And so I was glad to see it too, because I think you're right, that pulls in half the human population. But at the same time, is it, what could have been a good reason that they didn't have it there before, and did it offend you that they didn't have it there?
I didn't go too offended, I was confused, and it's because I didn't see any of the decision making. You know, we all know how Apple is such an open and transparent company. So without knowing any of the decision making behind it, mostly I was confused, and then just continued to be confused about why. You know, we saw all of that stuff last year, and one of the first thing a lot of people that I knew talked about was, it's going to be great because I'll be able to track all these different pieces of information, and then nothing that tracked that information actually became part of the app. There was no reproductive health in it at all. And people because initially we didn't see the definite panels of what was going to be available to you. And so then as it got more obvious that I can track my daily intake of riboflavin, and yet I can't, which I don't really care deeply about. And yet something else that is much more important to me is something that is missing from the app. So it was really nice to see that it did make it back in, or if it had ever been in and then somehow pulled for some reason. I would like to think it was maybe a design thing, or we don't have a good way to display this data, or it was really just a question of why, like I said, nobody stopped and thought about it, and it didn't occur to anyone that because tech is predominantly male, there are a lot of male people who work at Apple, a lot of male employees, which was another interesting thing yesterday, was seeing the women that came on stage.
And I want to add, not just at the keynote, but also in the State of the Union in the afternoon, too.
Yeah.
There was a much more diverse crowd.
Yeah, and they were together, they were polished, it was information that was great to see, and, having different people walk out on stage, as opposed to the folks we know are going to come out and give us kind of the song and dance with the karaoke pictures and everything else. And, we sort of are expecting that, and it's sort of a loosened up keynote from when it used to just be Steve on stage pacing with a bottle of water and a remote, Not that there was anything wrong with those presentations, but it's a different presentation. Apple is evolving. It's a different company now. So seeing that stuff, I think, was really great. And I'm glad it's in there now. And I'm just going to go ahead and be happy about the fact that it's there, and not continue to have angst over the fact that it wasn't there at first.
I think that's a good attitude, and I think that's the attitude we all need to take with this. This is, at this moment, it's a 1.0 product. We're looking at the allegedly 2.0 version. It may be 1.5, it may be 2.0 equivalent, but it's going to improve. We know that. So the things that are deficiencies right now or don't suit you, it's like the weather. Just wait a little while. It'll get better. And
what's important about that is that it's going to continue to evolve, and a lot of that stuff is software. If you buy a watch right now, it may end up with additional functionality just by getting a software update. There may be more things that they're able to do, once they find the right way to go about doing it. The watch is capable, they just haven't found a way to unlock that in a good fashion yet, or make it a good experience to use. So, because that's happened before with stuff from Apple, so
Well, it happens with everybody's software. You start out good, and maybe hopefully you continue on to great.
Yeah, and and having the hardware behind it to begin with, is what makes that really useful. It's not often that Apple will release something where the hardware is the limitation. The first iPad didn't have a camera, so everybody went, well, why didn't this have a camera? And so then the second one did, and so then going forward, it was something that got better in iterations, and there's other things that you can do with the camera and the iPad and stuff, and that got more interesting over time.
Last thing before we wrap, because I know you got stuff to do. The music announcements. Just general reaction to that. Oh boy.
Sorry, what?
Yeah. Okay, that's all the time we have for.
Well, the reason that I was over music when it began is because I'm not a paying streaming service user now of anything. I use iTunes Radio for free, and I occasionally will use Spotify for free, and that's about it. The rest of my music is stuff I listen to locally that was CDs I ripped, because apparently I'm not the young people anymore, and so I have my own CDs, and I put them in my computer like a caveman and make MP3s of them myself and listen to that. And that's what's on my phone, that's what's on my computer, that's what I listen to. So I don't use streaming services hardly ever. It's rare that I will do that on an ongoing basis, specifically. And so I wasn't super interested in the music stuff as we heard the rumors coming out about it in the first place. It didn't matter very much to me. It didn't seem like the thing that I wanted, because what I was waiting for was a new Apple TV. And to be able to get an app store on the Apple TV and have that better integrated into everything that's been happening. Because I'm a home automation nerd. And so when they announced HomeKit last year, I lost my fool mind. And I was so excited about how all this stuff was going to be such a better experience now that Apple has stepped in to the home automation arena with all this HomeKit stuff. And we still haven't seen any of it yet. And apparently there's a certification process that everything's going through that's taking forever. So I really want to find out more about doing that sort of stuff, and so that was the thing I was waiting for. I'm like, well, we didn't get one in October, and we didn't get one at the Special Watch event, and we didn't get one with this, and we didn't get one here, and we didn't get one here, and so now it's over 3 years old, and and it just keeps plugging along. And then Tim Cook comes out and says things like the Apple TV has made $1 billion. We can't really call it a hobby anymore, and I'm like, and then nothing. So for me, it was disappointing because I wanted it to be something else.
And I know that people are going to think I'm being defensive of Apple, but I will say this: the rumors are that it was pulled at pretty much the last minute. I'm glad they pulled it at the last minute, because if they had come out and it had been incomplete or not just what we want it to be, they would have been crucified and the product would have been killed before it ever got off the ground. So it's better. I don't care if we have to wait another 12 months, but let's get it. I don't want to wait 12 months, but note to Tim. But it's like taking a cake out of the oven. You got to wait till it's baked. Otherwise, it's going to be a horrible experience.
And I'm hoping that that's what happened. Is it was just something about the experience wasn't there. It wasn't up to whatever Apple's standard was, and so that's why we're going to end up waiting for it. But I do hope that it ends up rating its own event, and that it doesn't end up being like, here's the new iPhone, isn't it amazing? Here's the new iPad, isn't it amazing? We have an Apple TV, okay, bye. Like, I don't want that to be the case, because I feel like it's been long enough, and there's been enough people who have been excited about it and waited for it. Not very patiently in some cases, but I think that for people who are really excited about it, like, everybody's waiting. Everybody knows it's coming. Everybody's been waiting for so long, that I really hope it gets its own event to really get the opportunity to shine, because it could be a great device, and I think that's where my frustration comes from. Is I know it could be better. I know it could do so much more, because I have faith in Apple, and I know enough about the innards of the box that I have now to know what it's capable of doing, and I know that it could be a really great experience. And when you add the home automation stuff to it, it just seems like a slam dunk to me, and I really, really, really want it. So I'm glad if the problem was there was some sort of hitch and we have to wait until it's right, then I'm fine with that. I'm just disappointed that it wasn't now.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that. Where can folks go to find you when you're not here being interviewed by me?
You can find me over at the Mac Observer. I write stuff up there most of the time. I occasionally appear on the Daily Observations podcast with Jeff Gamet. I host my own podcast, The After Show, with Mike Rose, which rose from the ashes of the 2WA Talkcast that we used to do back in the day. And you can sometimes find me on the British Tech Network on shows there, and I'm on Twitter as Verso.
That's great. It's good to see you as always, Kelly.
Me too. Thanks, Chuck.
See you at the next karaoke.
Excellent.
No, her singing, not me, folks. I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. I'm in bad company. We'll be back from San Francisco with more. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the Mac Voices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the Mac Voices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest Mac Voices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free Mac Voices magazine on Flipboard by visiting macvoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.